Now for those exercises we talked about. The ProMix exercise chart, included with the ProMix set, shows 78 color combinations, each made by taking one of the 7 ProMix flesh colors and modifying it, in most cases by the addition of just one color. Only in the case of making a color more intense is it necessary to add more than one color. Let's talk about light 1. What you're going to do in just a moment, using the blank ProMix chart that's in your kit, is first you're going to paint light 1 right from the tube into the square at the top. Then there are 6 possibilities that you can do with it. You can make it warmer, you can make it cooler, you can make it lighter, you can make it darker, you can increase the intensity, you can reduce the intensity. And in each case, the chart will tell you the one color that you should add to the original color in order to get the combination. For example, you start by painting pure light 1 into the square at the top. Then here are 3 different suggestions for making light 1 slightly warmer. The first suggestion is alizarin crimson. So you'll wipe off your brush. With a clean brush, you'll take light 1 and a touch of alizarin crimson and mix the color on the palette. I'm going to show you that in just a moment. And you paint it into the square. Wipe your brush off, go back, reload it again with light 1, and this time you select a little touch of cadmium red light. I'm going to show you this in a moment. And the interesting thing, the challenging thing, is to notice the subtle variation. When you change from alizarin crimson to cadmium red light, it's still light 1, but the color shift is from a cool to a warm. Then you wipe the brush off again, and in this case you add just a touch of cadmium yellow light. Again you notice the subtle variation, and so forth down the chart. Let's try actually mixing it and painting it on the chart itself. All right, let's go to work on the blank ProMix chart that comes in the box of colors. We're going to start on the panel headed light 1. First, let's load up our brush with pure light 1 right straight from the tube, and we'll just paint it into the square at the top of the page, not being particularly careful. I think you want to obliterate the printed outline of that box. After it dries, it'll make it easier to see the color. All right. The first panel, as I said, gives you 3 separate suggestions of how you can very slightly alter light 1, making it warmer. The first suggestion is to add a touch of alizarin crimson. I'm going to take a touch of alizarin crimson on my brush, mix it into the light 1. I want it to be still light 1, but slightly different. Do you see that light 1 now takes on a slightly pinkish cast? I want the variation between this panel and that panel to be very slight. I have to look close to see it, because the variations in a portrait are very subtle to the eye. The next suggestion is for adding a bit of cadmium red light. Let's wash off the brush. We'll go back and reload with light 1. And this time we're going to reach up here for just a touch of cadmium red light. And as we mix it, I took a little too much, so let's add light 1 back in. Now, what we're looking for now as we paint it into the square is the subtle variation. It's very subtle between where we added alizarin crimson and where we're now adding cadmium red. It's just a slight. This is more of a pinkish shade. This is more of a warmer yellowish shade. Now the chart is saying what happens when we add cadmium yellow light? Let's wash the brush again. Clean off the brush, go back and reload with light 1, and this time we're going to take just a touch of cadmium yellow light. Now it's exciting to see the slight variation, the subtle variation that occurs. It's still light 1 all right, but now we've moved over into the clearly yellowish tone. Let me reduce the amount of variation just a bit. I've added a little bit of light 1 back into the mixture. The pinkish tones I'm going to find down in the cheek areas of my portrait head. The yellowish tone, I'm apt to find that up in the forehead of a portrait tone. But now our next assignment is to see what happens if we cool down light 1 a little bit. So once again, let's wash our brush off. Let's go up here and load it with light 1. And now the chart says, see what happens when you reach way across the palette for a little touch of cerulean blue. We take just a little bit of cerulean blue on the edge of the brush, and we immediately see what happens. It's subtle, but it's dramatic. The intensity goes way, way down, and the color becomes subdued and slightly grayish. And you will see a million places on your next portrait head where you can use that subtle combination. This is much cooler than the 3 warm tones in the row just above it. All right? The next assignment is simply to take pure light 1 and then lighten it. And there is one obvious way to do that. Let's load the brush with light 1. Let's go over here and dip into the white. We don't want to lose the identity of light 1. We want to achieve a subtle variation that is just 1 shade lighter. This might very well be the highlight that we'll use right in the middle of a forehead in our next portrait, or on the tip of a nose. Now let me hold the brush over light 1. Do you see that it's just a shade lighter? The chart then asks us to to darken light 1. I'm going to go back up, reload my brush, and to achieve the most subtle darkening, all I'm going to do is go to its next door neighbor and take some light 2 and mix it into the light 1. And this will be just a touch darker. Now you see what we're trying to achieve, the most subtle kind of variations. This is just a shade darker than the pure light 1. Now in the next panel is where you need more than one additive. Here they're making suggestions for how you can increase the intensity of light 1. So what we're going to do is load the brush in light 1, and it says add in a little bit of the 2 basic ingredients, namely yellow ochre and cadmium red. Now there you get a really robust version of light 1. It's still light 1, but it is much more intense than it was up there at the top of the column. And if you want to really make it zing out, we're going to reach up for a touch of cadmium orange. Now watch this, without washing the brush. I'm adding cadmium orange. Now there is a beautiful, beautiful tone that you can use in your next portrait, usually in the central third of the face. Now as you remember in the demonstrations that we did a little bit earlier, I very often had to reduce the intensity. And here it's suggesting take light 1 and reduce the intensity with a touch of neutral 3 I'm going to take just a bit of neutral 3 on the brush. The minute I mix it in, it has very much the same effect as when we earlier added cerulean blue. All right, it's still light 1, but I'm reducing the intensity below what pure light 1 would be. And finally, it gives us one other suggestion for reducing the intensity, and that is try adding a touch of halftone 1. I'm going to load the brush with light 1, brush it out, and a touch of our olive light halftone 1. Now you have to look sharp to see the difference between this and the one next to it, but it's certainly there. Let me add a little bit more of the halftone 1. It should give me just a little bit of the olive character of halftone 1. All right. What I hope to end up with on this panel is a number of variations that still retain the character of the base color, light 1, making these 6 variations. And then I go ahead and work my way across the chart.